Season 9 of Night School is presented by the AQHA. Watch and wager on this weekend's Texas Classic Futurity and the Golden State Million Futurity Finals. Keeneland Select. Visit KeenelandSelect.com and earn a $150 sign-up bonus. Woodbine. Live racing through December at Woodbine and Woodbine Mohawk Park. Remington Park. Live racing through Springmore Mile Day, December 15th. ExpressBet. Fund your account for free and get free past performances at ExpressBet.com. Thank you to all of our Season 9 sponsors, and thank you for listening. Enjoy tonight's season finale.
Horses have off days, and by looking at them before they actually get on the racetrack, you get an initial impression of which way they're leaning.
This is going to sound crazy, but for me, it's intellectual stimulation.
Class is now in session. It's time for Night School. Here are your hosts.
Welcome to Night School as Breeders' Cup is on our minds. I'm Jeremy Plonk from HorsePlayerNow, joined by Brian W. Spencer, General Manager at HP Now. And Brian, Breeders' Cup time is championship horses, championship connections, but a championship betting menu as well.
It's the kind of event every year that is just really untouchable when you look at the rest of the weekends that we offer in racing. Sure, we've got Derby weekend, which is probably the closest thing to it, but as far as the competitiveness of races, the ability to make a month or year-changing score, those opportunities present themselves all weekend on Breeders' Cup weekend, and that's what makes it so much fun. The racing is excellent. The prices are there. You've got such good horses. It's really the one weekend a year where you can look at multiple races and say, wow, that 20-1 horse has a real chance of winning this race, and you can say that 5 or 6 times throughout the course of the day. It's just an absolutely one-of-a-kind wagering opportunity, and there's a reason we all look forward to it as horse players.
And I think one of the standout factors in why it's such a good betting opportunity at the Breeders' Cup most years is the lack of horses you can toss out. You know, when you look at most races on an everyday program, you feel confident scratching 3, 4, 5, 6 horses off the bottom of the field and saying, okay, now I've got my contenders narrowed. But as you mentioned, you'll have a couple horses in every Breeders' Cup year that you look at and say, how in the world did X pay that? You know, and it'll be one of those situations where a good horse just gets overlooked because people are on other ones. And there aren't many toss-outs at the bottom of a field. I mean, you get a 12-horse field, maybe you've got 2 or 3 that you think are overmatched. Now you're looking at 9 contenders. There are very few races you're ever going to run into on an everyday program that have 9 legitimate win contenders. But we get that in the Breeders' Cup a lot of times. We also get some false favorites that are reputationally based. And sometimes if you've got an opinion against a horse and everybody goes all in on a Breeders' Cup, this is the kind of situation where you can get a horse who probably should be 3-1, 5-2 favorite that gets bet 7-5 and jacks everybody else up in price. And now you're looking at other Grade 1 winners and regional horses who were dominant that are let go at prices far above what they should be. When you can find a really overbet favorite, maybe a Unique Bella or something like that from some past Breeders' Cups, you'll find that when you beat that overbet favorite, you can get some major boxcar returns. That's all what we're looking for. We're looking for the best horse at the best price, and the Breeders' Cup offers more of those than any other day.
And when you talk about having 9 contenders left, we're not even talking fringe contenders. We're talking serious handicappers looking at horses on paper and saying, I see a legitimate, real path to victory for this horse. And you don't get to say that about a bunch of double-digit horses in the same race most days. But, we've gone through 19 episodes here on Season 9 of Night School. And one of the most fun things about Breeders' Cup weekend is, in a lot of ways, almost everything stays the same. The handicapping rules, very similar. You still got to put in the same kind of work. It's a grind. Everything stays the same, but you can also throw out a couple of the rules. It's the weekend where you can spread a little bit more because the potential payoffs are worth it. It's a weekend where I might even bet to show for the only time all year because horses who are 9-2 are going to pay $6.50. So I mean, just because they're so
there. Come on.
Yeah, there's so many competitive horses and so much money gets spread around covering so many of these combinations and spread out through those pools that you can make money in a lot of different ways that you maybe might not try to make money other times in the year.
No, good lesson in that for sure. Handicapping the Breeders' Cup, betting the Breeders' Cup, two different things. A lot of people say I'm a great handicapper, but I'm a lousy bettor. Your betting fundamentals can be strong on Breeders' Cup Day, and the handicapping just doesn't come together for you because there are so many good contenders out there to take a shot from. Don't worry about that. There'll be years when your Breeders' Cups aren't successful. Of the Breeders' Cups that have been run over the years, I've bet every single one of them, a couple of them before I was legally allowed to, but I can tell you that you will have more losing days than winning days in the Breeders' Cup for sure, but you will remember the winning days. This is like getting the new bike at Christmas, right? There's a Christmas every year when you were a kid, but you remember the year there was a new bike under the tree or something like
Sure.
that. The Breeders' Cup is special. I still remember 1996, 2006, Woodbine and Churchill as two of the best betting days of my life. I might have won more money on other days, but those are the most memorable winning big days because they were the Breeders' Cup too. It's kind of like you feel like you got to the finals. Here we are at the end of the night school term for season number 9. It's almost like the final exam of the year. You've watched all these horses from Gulfstream in the winter through Kentucky in the spring, New York in the summer, California to the fall, and up to the big day at Santa Anita this year. It'll be incredible to see how it turns out when all of the things that you've put into it throughout the course of the year get played out on the racetrack. And do you have a big day? If you do, you're going to remember it for the rest of your handicapping career. So how do we pick these winners at the Breeders' Cup, Brian? For me, I think stats and historical trends are very important here because these races have generally been set up by division very similarly throughout the years. The same prep races leading to the same prep races leading to the same prep races. Some regions of the country have been much better than others. The California sprinters more preferred than the East Coast sprinters more often than not in the Breeders' Cup. Some regional biases when you get to the 2-year-old races. The East in the East, the West in the West, and the 2-year-old races. The horses with the least amount of travel have seemed to do better. There are some historical trends that I think play out year to year. They're not all telling and they're not factual, but they lean you in the right direction a lot of times. And for me, I lean heavily on the historical trends when I handicap the Breeders' Cup races. I'm a little bit different of a horse player in that regard than I even do that in some regular meets because I'm looking for ways races are won. I don't think that they're all unique situations, and the Breeders' Cup, the history seems to repeat itself with some of these trends in some of the divisions. So I'll lean on the historical trends at the Breeders' Cup, which might be a little bit different from some others. What are some of your factors?
Well, one of the things that I'm always trying to find is it's the Breeders' Cup. Everybody's aiming for it. Everyone's trying to fire their big shot that day, but kind of trying to look for sort of natural form cycles has been a little bit of a thing that's kind of helped me out a little bit too. Is sure, Todd Pletcher off 30 to 45 day layoff with his Breeders' Cup prep. You can get a percentage on that, but just kind of looking at the horse itself, taking everything else out, you can sometimes get an idea of a horse who's just kind of coming into it the right way, and you can see it even if they haven't won their prep race, but really which horse is naturally, at least as naturally as I can think I can see it, sitting on a big race on this big day. Because most of these horses are going to fire, so you've got to try to figure out a different way to separate who's ready, who's not, try to get an idea in that sense. But the biggest thing for me is that if you can really find one or two horses that you want to key your day around, you will be able to at the Breeders' Cup. Other days and races, if you love a 10-1, maybe the race before it is a 5-horse field. Can't play that double, can't get much out of that, generally speaking. But at the Breeders' Cup, if you love a 10-1, there's going to be doubles, pick 3s, pick 4s. horse, intra-race gimmicks, and the pools are all going to be big enough to make sense to attack that horse every which way. You get that one horse right, you're done for the day, month, year. You're having a good one.
And when we budget on a regular day, I might be putting 40% of my budget for the day into two races. Two races equal 80%, and nickel dime on some of the others. The
Sure.
Breeders' Cup is very similar to that, and I think where you just said you spotlight a horse or two you love, you've got to play him 7 ways to Sunday. You've got to try to maximize that horse, in that opinion, and leverage it as much as you can. So maybe you have put a lot of your eggs into one basket, but when you're right, you are just going to knock it completely out of the park and make up for a lot of losses throughout the course of the year when you're kind of nickel diamond or playing around. This is a chance, I think, where you can really leverage an opinion and go after it strongly. Make your budget for the 2 days. Remember, these 2 days are not created equal. You've got all the races on Friday. You've got the races on Saturday. Are you into 2-year-olds? If you're not much into 2-year-olds, you got to stay away from the 2-year-old races. Don't blow too much of your budget where you don't focus or where your strengths aren't. If you're really good with turf horses, you've got to focus on the turf races. And so know where your strengths are. And maybe that comes along with the preps. How did you handicap the preps? I think that's important. Have I done well in the sprint races? You go back, okay, how did I do in the Vanderbilt? How did I do in the Smile Sprint? How did I do in the big races in California, the Santa Anita Sprint Championship? Did I have a good feel for that division? If I didn't have a feel for that division throughout any of the preps, I'm probably not going to be too strong on it when they all come together at the Breeders' Cup. So go back and keep track of your prep stats throughout the course of the year and see how you've done, even if it's anecdotal. You hit a couple good ones in the juvenile division, you kind of feel like you know what's going on with the 2-year-old males. So maybe that's a race where you want to lean in on a little bit more. When they all come together in one spot, you've got to be able to make separations and make opinions, and if you had those in earlier races, that can be a good thing. But don't get married to your opinion. You may have looked at a race, say the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, and were totally against the horse, and he ran off and won, and he made you look bad. Don't be egotistical and stubborn to think that you just could not have been wrong that race and think that this horse is not going to do it again. Look at them objectively. Go back, reassess your opinions, look what you did well and what you didn't do well, because when we get here to the Breeders' Cup, Brian, there's going to be a million different ways for you to change your mind. Stubbornness is probably not one that's going to be among your better choices.
And I really like the idea of seeing historically which divisions you've had some good results in, whether it is the juveniles or whether it's turf races. And, it's no guarantee that it will carry over to the Breeders' Cup, but at the very least, it tells you that you've been, kind of seeing the ball well in that division, which is, I think, as good a starting point as any horse player can come from. But it's a day where you can break a few rules along the way. But really, when you're looking at it, the Euros are another big thing. We talked about this in our turf episode earlier. You can do a lot more research these days than you may have been able to 10, 15 years ago. Just go online, put that horse's name in quotes in a Google search, and look up race replays. You can pull up a lot of stuff and see how those Euros move. So you can actually do a lot more of your own work these days if you've got the time to do it, to assess those European invaders as well. Just another tricky factor on probably the toughest racing days of the week, or of the year rather.
And your advanced handicapping probably for Friday and Saturday. The entries come out earlier in the week. You've got time to study. You maybe had the pre-entries a week before, so you've got some ideas where you want to go. You have to know where the short prices are on Breeders' Cup Day. We're all looking for the long shots, but you have to know where the short prices are, because those are the races you're probably going to avoid your budget on. Again, we're trying to make scores here on Breeders' Cup Day and make an impact. And also, if you know where the short prices are, you can budget accordingly. If you think the races later in the day, the mile, the turf, the classic, are coming down the chalk, you're going to front end your betting. You know that you're not going to make your day late in the card if you think those favorites and those short prices are the horses to beat. Don't leave yourself in that situation. Also, if you're playing multi-race wagers, there's really no reason not to bet early. You're going to outthink yourself. The track's playing this way or that way. Chances are you're going to be wrong in trying to assess a quick knee-jerk bias. You don't want to get to the late pick 4 and not have the proper budget to play what you want to play. You're down down to $82 and you wanted to play a $90 pick 4 ticket. Now you're making adjustments because you overspent in the earlier races. So play your multi-race wagers early in the day. They're set. You're not looking at tote boards anyway leading into those races. You can always go back and cancel if the lead race of the pick 4 is coming up and your horse flipped in the paddock that you were betting. Rebet the play and take the horse out who flipped or something along those lines. You can always adjust back. But you can't put extra money in your budget unless you're doing the walk of shame, and nobody wants to be going back and making, budgetary decisions like that late in a Breeders' Cup day and chasing money, especially if you know the shorter prices are coming later on the card. So, Brian, to me, I think you really have to have a roadmap for Friday and Saturday before they start running.
And I think this also goes back a little bit to what we discussed a few episodes in psychology. It's such a big day. Every race is the big race. When we talk on Kentucky Derby Day, everybody wants to be able to say they hit the Derby. But if your strong opinion is in the Distaff Turf Mile, bet that your bank account doesn't care whether you hit the Turf Mile or you hit the Kentucky Derby. So you don't have to be scoring on the Classic. If you don't have to be putting your bankroll on the Classic because you want to be able to tell your friends that you nailed the Classic. Who cares? How much money did you come out of the day with is the big thing. So especially choosing those spots and not getting in your head and getting sucked into playing a race because you're supposed to on Breeders' Cup Day is a big disciplinary spot as well.
We're going to take a time out here in night school, go into the vault, past night school guest and one of our past co-hosts, Bob Newmeyer, who you've seen on many Breeders' Cup telecasts as the NBC Sports handicapper. Bob's going to give us his thoughts on betting the Breeders' Cup, and then Caton Bredar, the Queen of Night School, will rejoin us for the season finale of Night School Season 9. She'll wrap it up with Brian on the other side. Newmy and Caton to come. Stay with us.
Pick, bet, and cheer on live racing from Woodbine and Mohawk Park. Thoroughbred and harness action. The wagers are just the beginning. Watch award-winning broadcasts covering both breeds, incredible battles contested over the most unique grass course in North America. Experience the full fields with over 130 thoroughbred and 160 live harness days. Get access to free handicapping material and join the ranks of Woodbine and Mohawk Park players from all over the globe. For more information, visit woodbine.com.
Strategize, analyze, select. Join Keeneland Select to bet on racing from around the world on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, anytime, anywhere. Featuring the best rewards in racing, free pass performances, live video, race replays, and more. Plus, Keeneland Select invests a portion of its profits back into the sport. Join Keeneland Select today and earn a $150 sign-up bonus at KeenelandSelect.com. Dedicated to the sport and dedicated to the players.
Some folks like to bet on the horses. Some like to bet on the games. Some folks like to bet on their phone. And some like to bet from their suite. So what's your best bet? All of the above. No matter how you like to bet, Remington Park is your best bet yet. With world-class horse racing, OKC's newest casino and online suite booking now available. Remington Park, it's your best bet yet.
Hey, what's going on? Mikey here, and I'm going to tell you about an offer from my good friends at ExpressBet. Let's be honest, we know you love playing the races, but you can't always make it to the track. Sometimes life just gets in the way of a good bet. Well, what if I told you about a place where you never miss a bet and you start with house money? You'd say I'm crazy, right? Well, not at ExpressBet. Your first $100 are on them. That's right. Sign up with ExpressBet.com using promo code XBRadio, bet $100, and they'll deposit $100 back into your account the very next day. Hey, plus you could get an extra $25 if you use Express Fund Direct Deposit. You see what I mean? House money for betting the races. It's that easy. Check it out at expressbet.com to learn more. And don't forget to sign up with promo code XBRadio. You're gonna love it. And that's a Mikey guarantee. Must be 18 years or older and 21 years old in certain states to open an account with ExpressBet and reside in a state where such activity is legal. Void where prohibited. National Gambling Support Line 800-522-4700.
Welcome back to the show. Enjoy this classic night school clip from the vault.
Yeah, I don't have any particular anything to add about this other than, the Churchill horses run better than
if they've proven that they can, do they run better at the Breeders' Cup? I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. It's more like, what have you done for me lately? How good are you? What's your condition? Whatever. I will say one thing, though, about the Breeders' Cup day, having been and looked at them and handicapped them for many years, I would say that we're excited about it because it's got the best horses and the big fields, and that's what we love. But at the same time, and I think last year it was proven that the results are pretty bizarre, to be honest with you. I mean, God love you if you can figure some of these races out, because I looked at last year and I thought it was inexplicable, to be honest with you. And I think I've come over the years to figure out that I used to think that cheaper races are less formful than classy races. Well, I've changed my tune. I think that cheaper races are more formful than classy races. So, again, give me a 10,000 no winners at 2 than, a grade 1 distaff, if you will. While I enjoy watching them and I enjoy reporting on them and I enjoy seeing them, no doubt, betting them is a whole other story, and I think that it's more formful, in my experience anyway, that the cheaper horses do better. I don't know why.
Set to close out Season 9 of Night School as we bring in Caton Bredar one last time here in this season as we talk betting the Breeders' Cup. And Caton, certainly some rules stay the same. Some rules are a little different, I think, for all handicappers, based on how we play a certain day as to how we play the Breeders' Cup. So, walk us through kind of what works best for you. What do you do the same as you do every other day? What do you do differently from other days? What makes the Breeders' Cup and handicapping the Breeders' Cup specific to that one event?
Well, one thing that I do differently on Breeders' Cup Day is assume that every horse in the race has a chance and is poised to run their very best. And this is different that, usually there's circumstances that warrant you throwing horses out or thinking they're going to be subpar. But I think you really have to go into the Breeders' Cup of the mindset that each horse running has earned the right to be there, has shown that they have the talent to be there, and also has been pointed for those races with that sort of the ultimate goal. And that the trainers involved and the horses involved are kind of poised to run their best. And then it becomes a matter of determining, with the circumstances of the race, the track, the venue, all the different circumstances, the pace, who could be the best of the best. And I do think that's a difference from other races where you can pretty safely assume a few horses are going to bounce or regress or maybe not be at their best. I don't think that's the case with the Breeders' Cup. I also think that while you can bet more on Breeders' Cup races, you still have your favorites and play to your strengths. And the one thing, I think the biggest mistake I've made in the past is that I've liked a horse all season long and felt strongly about them. And when Breeders' Cup time came around and it came time to wager, I didn't maintain that strength of my conviction. If I liked a horse all season long going into it, those should be the horses, no matter what the price is on them, that are my key horses to play with and around. And I would also say that I probably play as many vertical wagers as I do horizontal wagers. And that's different from most other days where you don't have that opportunity. But I think the Breeders' Cup is the opportunity where you can really have fun doing both within the course of each race. There's usually opportunities to bet, but then the multi-race wagers are just wonderful. They're challenging, but the payoffs are incredible and they're so much fun. So when you've done the work for all the races, it makes sense to play both types of wagers there, and either one will compensate should you be successful, and you're not successful in the other, you're going to carry the day. But maintaining strength of convictions and assuming that each horse can run the best are the biggest things that I think I do differently.
Yeah, and the Breeders' Cup is, Caton driving that point home. It's a race where everybody is entered because they are there because they think they've got a chance to win or run well. And that's really not necessarily the case in all of these races that we see across the country throughout the entire year. This is going to wrap up Season 9 of Night School. We appreciate everybody listening for all 9 seasons. Be sure to visit HorsePlayerNow.com for archives of past episodes, more interviews, and all other kind of things that we are up to there on behalf of myself, Jeremy Plonk, Caton Bredar, and all of our past Night School guests who made appearances from the vault this season. Thank you so much for listening. Good night.
Next on FAQ 60, track bias. Track bias occurs when a portion of the racetrack is more favorable to horses traveling over it than another part of the track. Weather and track maintenance can cause biases, but many times an apparent bias is merely a coincidence of the best horses winning from similar post positions. When identifying a track bias, look at the horse's odds in question. Are favorites or long shots performing well or poorly from the perceived to be biased area? Write down the posts for top finishers in each race and where they raced, as well as their odds. You might uncover a track bias. Track biases in quarter horse racing deal with favorable running lanes rather than a favorable running style in thoroughbred racing, because the short line combatants use the entire width of the track. This FAQ 60 is brought to you by AQHA Racing and HorsePlayerNow.
Enjoy tonight's episode? Check out hundreds of past archives at HorsePlayerNow.com.